What about Chris Jericho coming back to WWE? What about that stuff that started swirling? He was with the learning tree. I know the last time we saw him, he was angry and he left into obscurity. It wasn't seen for the last few months, and then rumors started swirling that, well, not even rumors. There was rumors that maybe he would want to go to WWE. Then it was the company believes that he'll be coming back by the Rumble in Saudi Arabia. Uh, like Tony Khan on a media call praised Chris Jericho. Um, Chris Jericho liking a post about him possibly going back to WWE or there being interest or something like that. What is the reality? What is I guess what is the demand, or do you think, for Chris Jericho to go back to WWE? Because he spent a long time now in AEW. He's built that company. He's a huge part of it. And now for him to go back to WWE, is it one final run in a Hall of Fame and a couple matches there, a couple of dream matches for Chris Jericho on a maybe part-time basis? Is there incentive for Jericho to go back to WWE? Because I thought he could have his way in AEW, and I thought Tony Khan would pay him whatever. Has Tony Khan, do you think, decided to, hey, listen, I've had former WWE guys here, I've paid through the nose, and they've done nothing. Now, Chris Jericho, you've done more than most of anyone has ever done for this company. You put us on the map. But now, as you're in your 50s, is Tony Khan willing to bite the bullet and pay another mega contract, like another 4-year deal worth what, maybe an $8 million? You think, or do you think Tony is now like, hey, listen, I'm getting Chris Jericho on the very tail end now, and I'm not going to pay through the nose for Chris. Is it okay for him to have his one final run in WWE? Where do you think the mindset is for Tony Khan, and where do you think demand is for Jericho back in WWE?
Wow, that's a toss-up question right there in terms of trying to get into the mindset of Tony Khan. I don't know if I could do that. And the reason why I say that is not a slight on Tony, though, but if I were to say that Tony would have the business mindset to say, Jericho's at the tail end of his career. I paid him a ridiculous amount of money. I don't see a profit or return on my investment if I were to pay him, let's say, for another 2 or 3 years to work with the company and extend it. It could be a scenario where Tony wants just to go in a different direction. Because and the reason why I say that is not because of how he views Chris Jericho. I mean, look what he did for Sting. Sting was well past his prime. I love Sting, well past his prime, and he bent over backwards for Sting to put him in these scenarios. I mean, do you really think he was worth the money he was being paid to wrestle at that stage of his career where he could barely move, but still showed you glimpses of the old Sting? Same thing with Jericho, right? So I don't know if this is more of a decision of what Tony Khan wants to do business-wise. I think, honestly, this is a decision of what Jericho wants to do business-wise. And what I mean by that is that he left WWE initially because he was kind of burnt out. He had not burnt out, but he was kind of a little upset of what happened with him in the match with Kevin Owens. The fact that he wanted to either be last because the original scenario was that he was going to win the Universal title. They switched that to Goldberg. He had no problem with it. He wanted to start off WrestleMania, and they came out third. And he felt that was a disrespect of all the work that him and Kevin had done for the Festival of Friendship. That was a huge success on Raw. They had to fight for with Triple H to get that done the way he wanted to get done. And the mere fact that when the match was over, he was pitted third, and also Vince didn't like the match. I think Jericho was like, all right, there's nothing more I could do here. If I continue with this company, they're going to basically make me a gatekeeper. It's a word that gets used a lot nowadays, right? So he decided to go on to something different. He did the Kenny match, did things in New Japan, and then this whole thing with AEW started. So I think it was just a refreshing thing for Jericho to do. Now it's at the point where I think he's done everything he can do in AEW. You could see if you could try to, put him with two young guys, which what they try to do with the learning tree, try to boost them up. But I don't think it really worked. I think the crowd, the AEW crowd, was kind of tired of Jericho. You could definitely see when they were chanting, "Please retire." It was an endearing thing.
I think there's more. I think there's more backstage stuff with Jericho than with Sting, and that's why I think the crowd soured on Jericho. The online rumors and all that stuff that happened, I think a lot of people believed it. A lot of people kind of thought, a lot of people kind of got off because there was a point, Trent, so let's be honest, me and you thought that Chris Jericho could do no wrong. We thought he was this chameleon. We thought he was the pain maker, all this stuff, the way he would change and he would adapt. And then you got this version of the learning tree, Chris Jericho, and we were like, what the? are we looking at here, right?
Mhm.
Because there was a point we idolized Chris Jericho because this was the guy that, listen, he knew how to pick from here, pick from there, how to adapt in the business. He knew what people wanted, and then obviously he contributed so much for that company. You got the Jericho Appreciation Society, which was to me their peak, and then you got the Learning Tree, which was way down here, and then you
They're down.
saw the water down Jericho, which I never thought you would, but it just seemed like as far as creatively, I think he hit a wall. Plus the outside stuff surrounding Chris Jericho, all the allegations and all that stuff to me, I think that's when the fans really soured on Jericho because it was a love fest. They were singing the man's song, for God's sakes. It was probably one of the best things ever that you would see. And then all of a sudden, and just like that adoration for Chris Jericho was gone in AEW.
Yeah, and like I said, I think it's more of a business aspect of where Jericho feels he can, end his career. I don't know if he plans on wrestling anytime soon. I'm pretty sure the window is closed there. But in previous podcasts, they've mentioned and they've asked him the question, would he be willing to go back to WWE? And he said, yeah, I would be willing to go back there if there was an offer or something like that coming towards the tail end. So in the early stages, he never really said that. He always mentioned how loyal he was to AEW and how he wanted to help this company grow, in essence, compete with WWE and somehow take over, which I don't know what Kool-Aid he was drinking when he made that statement. But again, you have to when you're working for the company. And now I think he's just more open to the fact of, listen, I'm at the tail end of my career. I mean, he's got his music to fall back on. Not that it's something to fall back on, but that's one of his other passions. And I just think it just makes more sense because now if he were to go back to WWE, which I think he is, and I think there is interest by WWE and Jericho, there are some matches you could set up there if you want. We're not going to talk about that until it becomes closer into the reality. But ultimately, at the same time, too, has not worked under this regime when Triple H is running everything. So that might pique interest to him as well. Because hey, I've dealt with a machine when Vince was running it. Now it seems like everything is not as scripted as it once was, and there is some freedom for creativity there. And that might intrigue him as well to work with a roster of talent that he has not worked with before for a very long time. So it could be something refreshing. So ultimately, I think it's a swan song in a scenario where I think we're at the tail end of his career. You could have said that maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and I think right now that would be just huge for people to hear break the walls down and him come back and to finish his career with the company
No.
that kind of set him to that stage.
Oh, Trent he can't come back. You think his first appearance he comes back with Break the Walls Down? It's not Judas.
No, I think it should be Judas, but I told you I think there'll be a version where you're gonna hear that sound break the walls down. I would love
A
to hear him come
remix.
back to Judas, but a type of a remix here. Like remember, Vince was hell bent on saying that's your song till you die. Vince is not there anymore. So now, can there be a scenario we hear break the walls down in a Judas combination or just Judas in general? I don't know. But regardless of the fact that happens, like again, we're still ways from that happening to becoming reality. I think it's a smart move with Jericho. It'd be a smart move with WWE. Listen, I'm not expecting him to have 5-star matches or him to be what he once was 20 years ago. But this version of Chris Jericho, let's put away the learning tree for that fiasco. I still think has a lot more to offer at this last stage of his career. Why not end it with WWE? Would make sense to me.
It makes sense. There is more for Jericho to do in WWE now because, like you said, the good thing about territories or the good thing about having other places to go is that if you got stale in one place, you go to the other one,
Yeah.
go do your thing, and then come back here and you be refreshed. And that's what I think Chris Jericho is banking on, literally and figuratively, that he's going to get a fresh start in WWE. But will it happen? Will at the end of the day, Chris Jericho, go back to the company, or will he be able to resolve something with Tony Khan? Now, Tony Khan could just be saying all these nice things. Jericho is kind of like Chris will always be able to work together and all that stuff because he said nice things about nice people and things haven't worked out contractually. But things could work out, and then he could be back with AEW. But right now, the more sense would be for him to go finish out in WWE. But we'll see what happens there. But that's well into 2026, and if it were to happen, a lot of people say it's going to be the Royal Rumble in Saudi Arabia. But